Story time on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, you guys, so today's story is my own. Let's get into it. Okay, so boom. I was in the 9th grade when this happened and my brother was in the 12th. We always took a bus to a bus stop that was 5 minutes away from our house and we walked the rest of the way home. I had super strict parents, so I didn't have a cell phone. This detail comes into play later on. So on this particular day, our routine changed. My brother had to complete some community service hours, so we were going to separate. I was going to go home and my brother was going to go the opposite direction to the daycare that was also 5 minutes away from the bus stop. The bus dropped us off, and before my brother walked away, he told me to be careful, and I was like, yeah, thinking this was going to be a regular walk home. But I was definitely wrong about that. About 3 minutes into me walking, when my brother was no longer in sight, a car slowly pulls up next to me and puts his window down. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, so I'm walking home alone and my brother is no longer in sight and the streets are kind of empty. A car slowly pulls up next to me and a guy puts his window down. A man who looks like he's in his 40s yells out, "Hello, beautiful." I kept walking and ignoring him and he got louder, and now he's following me in the same pace as I'm walking with his car. "Hey, what's your name?" That's what he yelled, but he said it so loud that it scared me and I started walking even faster. He drives up next to me again and leans over to the passenger seat to try to open the door and told me to get in. At this point, I'm jogging. So he parked his car and started jogging right after me. I full-blown started running, and guess what he did? He went back into his car and started driving to me. At this point, I'm 30 seconds away from my house and I don't want to go there so he knows where I live. So I go to the gas station and he follows me. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, I started running and he got back into his car and I was 30 seconds away from my house, so I didn't want him to know where I lived, so I ran to the gas station and he followed me. So now I'm in the gas station acting like I'm buying something and this guy literally parked his car and walks inside and comes right up to me. He then says, "Hello, beautiful, what's your name?" I don't know why I answered. I just was scared, so I said my name was Victoria, which is not, it's Valerie, but I said Victoria. Then he grabs my arm and says, "Victoria, you're coming home with me tonight." He starts to squeeze my arm and grips it really tight. Y'all, I was so scared. I don't even know why I didn't scream. I was just like in fear. But I'll be damned if this man was gonna take me home. He whispered in my ear to walk to the car, and at that moment I screamed to the cashier. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, he told me to walk to the car, and at that moment, I screamed to the cashier. He's squeezing my hand and he's trying to take me. All the cashier did was look up and said, "What's going on?" And that man ran to his car. I'm talking about bolted. He was gone, flash. I stayed with the gas station lady for about 30 minutes after that because I was so scared to walk home. And then eventually a nurse that was also in the gas station who was waiting with me walked me home. I'm still grateful for that nurse till this day. Thankfully, that was a gas station that was close to our house and my family always went there, so they knew all of us. The gas station lady told my family what happened and they got me a phone the very next day. And now my brother always walked me home first before going to go do his community service hours. It's crazy because that was the very first time I walked home alone and something happened. Even if you think you're good, be careful because you never can know what happens. Be safe out there, guys. Story time on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. Okay, so boom. My mom and my dad had been together for 14 years up until this point. And my mom was actually pregnant with my soon-to-be little sister. My mom and my dad almost never argued. They had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. And my mom was very close to her twin sister for obvious reasons. I mean, they're twins. Well, one day when my parents was at work, I decided to skip school with my friends and go to the movie theaters instead. But I needed some money. So I was planning on going home to get money out of my mom's purse since she never noticed when I took anything. I assumed the house was empty because I was usually the first one home, then my mom, then my dad. Remember that because that's important for later on in the story. Y'all, I ran into the house and I went straight for my parents' room. I mean, I was loud. I didn't hear any moaning, y'all. Guess he was doing a bad job. But anyways, I opened that door and there it was. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I opened the door into the room and there it was. My dad and my mom's sister literally staring at me in shock. I closed that door so fast and ran to my room, I didn't even give him a chance to react. Y'all, I didn't even realize that wasn't my mom. Don't worry though, because I eventually did. Stick with me. But yeah, I was panicking on how I was going to explain why I skipped school and that I just walked in on them. I was waiting for them to come talk to me, but they never did. About 4 hours later, my real mom came home and screamed that she got food for us. Now remember what I said. I'm usually the first home, then my mom, then my dad. So my mom only bought food for me and her, assuming that her husband wasn't going to be home till later. So anyways, I went downstairs and told my mom sorry about earlier. She was confused and said what happened earlier. And this is when it got real, y'all. Life for part 3. Part 3 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I told my mom I'm sorry about what happened earlier, and she said, what happened earlier? Y'all, my stupid ass. I really thought that was my mom's way of trying to act like nothing ever happened. So I just laughed. But then I said, where's dad's food? Then my mom said, you know he doesn't come home from work till later, so the food will spoil by then. Y'all, at that very moment, it hit me. I realized that when I opened the door for that split second, I didn't see my mom have a pregnant belly. So out of nowhere, I made that, oh my gosh, I just realized something noise. You know that noise. It goes like this. So my mom's still confused, asking, what's wrong? I said, Mom, were you here earlier? She said, of course not, honey. I was at work the whole day. I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. My mom immediately stopped eating. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. Then my mom immediately stopped eating. My mom looked at me so serious and said, what are you talking about? And I explained everything to her. The anger my mom had is just something I can't explain. Let me remind you that my mom is pregnant and she's finding out that her husband is cheating on her with her twin sister while pregnant, and she's finding out by her daughter. My dad was a dead man. Once he came home, his life fell apart. He cried and begged my mom not to leave him, but nope, she divorced him and took him for everything he got, might I add. My mom couldn't even look at her sister, so their relationship was never the same. And it doesn't help that my mom slept with her boyfriend a year later. My mom is pet at tea. I still get to see my dad, but I always have that scene in the back of my head. But hey, I never got in trouble for ditching school, so it all worked out. Story time on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. And no, this is not the story of Rosa Parks. It is the story of Claudette Colvin, and she actually gave up her seat 9 months before Rosa Parks. Claudette lived in Montgomery, Alabama, where at the time they tried to keep black people in their place. But that didn't faze Miss Claudette. She was angered by the case of Jeremiah Reeves, an older classmate at Booker T. Washington High School who was indicted in 1952 and later executed for allegedly raping a white woman. Because of this, she went on to join the NAACP Youth Council and took to flaunting her natural hair in defiance of the pressure to have it straightened. On March 2nd of 1955, Claudette was riding the bus home from school when the driver ordered her and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman, but she refused. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how a 15-year-old black girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, the bus driver ordered Claudette and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman. All 3 of her classmates got up, but Claudette did not budge. She refused and said she knew her constitutional rights. They responded by roughly yanking her off of the bus, handcuffing her, and placing her in a cell. Claudette cried and prayed until her mother and pastor came a few hours later to bail her out. Claudette caught the attention of local black leaders who helped her get legal representation that led to most of her charges getting dropped. The leaders wanted to use her as an example as justification for a citywide bus boycott, but they thought she was too young and emotional. When it was revealed that Claudette had been impregnated by an older man later that summer, it confirmed their sentiment. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, once they found out that Claudette was pregnant by an older man, they said that she was the wrong person for the movement. The right person arrived 9 months later when Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old seamstress and NAACP secretary, made headlines for her arrest on December 1st, prompting the launch of the Montgomery bus boycott the following day and the national rise of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. With all that being said, Claudette sparked legal action that led to the end of Alabama's segregated bus laws and enabled a widespread civil rights movement to pick up steam. A big thanks to Miss Claudette Colvin. Story time on how I sent my nudes to my dad. I'm talking full, clear, tunnel vision to my cat child. Just know this story ends with me getting my behind beat. So I was 17 at the time, and I had a boyfriend who was also 17, and we've been together for 1 year. We were in the same grade, but we always had different classes, so I usually seen him during lunch. My parents were super strict and religious, so we had to keep our relationship on the low. So my boyfriend